Today I'm going to do something that is basically a wrap. Now the official recipe says it's called vegetable cornmeal crepes, and my daughter and I, my daughter who has taken French and I who haven't had it since high school, she laughed at me so hard every time I tried to say crepes with a French accent that I decided we weren't even going to use them. So the recipe includes information on how to make crepes, and I've actually made some up that I'm going to show you in the end, but I'm going to actually demonstrate this using tortillas as the wrap part of it. So we're going to do it a little bit different. What I have here is 2 teaspoons of olive oil or other kind of vegetable oil. Canola oil would work well. And I have a pound of new potatoes that I've sliced about a ½ inch thick. And they've already been cooked, so this is a recipe that you can do a lot of the work ahead of time. To that, I'm adding a cup of mushrooms that are sliced and half of a red pepper, or about somewhere between half to 3/4 of a cup of red pepper. Now you could use green, and this is the time of year when we often are trying to clean out a freezer for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want things that are in your freezer in there any longer than 1 year, really, particularly with vegetables, because they begin to get some frostbite on them, and primarily because you lose a lot of nutritional value. So we want to make sure that you rotate out. And if you have any red peppers left from last summer, and you could use jalapeno peppers if you want to spice this up a bit, or other kinds of peppers that you have in your freezer, this is a real good time to use them. This is a dish where they don't need to be real crisp. They're going to get cooked down and tenderized. We're going to cook this for about 5 minutes until the potatoes start to get a little bit brown. Next thing that's going in is about 2 small or 1 to 1½ medium zucchini that's been coarsely shredded. And again, this is something that you can be pulling out of your freezer. If you're using that's been frozen, however, you're going to want to make sure that you drain it fairly well before you add it in, but it's a perfectly good choice. And you may also want to shorten the cooking time, because before you will have put it in your freezer, you will have blanched it somewhat. But the frozen will work great here, since the regular zucchini won't be quite ready. And then also, I've got 2 cups of broccoli florets. And again, these could either be out of the supermarket, your garden, or fresh. If you use those, you need to cook them just a little bit, steam them until they're just crisp tender, because we're going to put these together and then basically heat them through. Again, if you're using them out of your freezer, they've already been blanched, so you may want to thaw them before you put them in, so that the rest of the vegetables don't overcook while you're waiting for the broccoli or the other frozen things to heat on through. But do look at this as a dish that you can either have a lot of things done ahead of time. You can use cook broccoli for dinner today and cook enough to make this dish tomorrow or the next day. The same with shredding the zucchini, cutting the mushrooms, cooking the potatoes. This can be a very fast dish to put together when the time comes to actually make the preparation, if you've either pulled things out of the freezer or you've done a lot of prep ahead of time. This needs to go for about 3 minutes if everything you're putting in is fresh. Adjust that time if you're using other methods. At this point, you can turn off the heat, and we're going to stir in 3 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, about a ½ teaspoon of thyme leaves, dry thyme leaves. If you have fresh thyme, that's an even better idea. 2 teaspoons of finely chopped would be wonderful. If you choose, you can add about an 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. Now, this is something that lends itself to perking itself in a lot of ways, so if you wanted to add some hot sauce to this, you could easily do that. We're going to put this now, as I said, you just want to stir that together a little bit. If you're using crepes, they're going to be fairly small, so you're going to use about 1/3 of a cup of filling per crepe. If you're using tortillas, depending on the size, you're going to have to adjust the amount of filling that you put in. But using a metal measuring cup makes it pretty easy to get that measurement down. You don't want to use a portion that's too large. We want to have about 2 of these per person, and you want to have enough to go around. But also remember that one of our goals in the U.S. right now is to try and reduce the amount of overweight and obesity. And using too large portions is one of the fallacies or the problems that we run into. Vegetables are usually not the cause, however, so if you get a little bit more in there than the official recipe calls for, it's probably going to be better for you than if you would add a lot more cheese to this, or decide you're going to put on cheddar cheese and that kind of thing. Make sure that you get plenty of each kind of vegetable in there, and then just roll it up and put seam side down. And what I like to do, these are a lot larger than the crepes, by the way. I've got an example of those here, and you can see how they worked out. Because the filling makes you make a little more filling than you would actually need. I like to put a little bit of that on the top. You could, if you were doing it heating it with some Mexican ingredients or Hispanic ingredients, you could add a little bit of salsa to that as well. Put a dollop of sour cream on the top. Fat-free would be preferable. Maybe a little bit of parsley to decorate it a bit. Put the vegetables on the top. Add enough green, enough red, and make it really more festive than a little bit of parsley would. I hope you'll try it, whether you use the crepes or whether you use tortillas or whether you use another kind of roll-up of flatbread. This is something I think your family will enjoy. It's quick, it's nutritious, and it really has a lot of nice flavor. Vegetable cornmeal crepes. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.